Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Raz. I'm the semi-retired samurai, and on this channel I talk about life after 50 and living on your own terms. And today I want to talk to you about aging parents. Now, the last few years when my parents call, a lot of things have changed. You know, when they called before that, it used to be the regular call where you get talk about life and catch up on things. Nowadays, when I receive a call from them, I hold my breath for a split second because, my mom is almost 80. Her health is not the best. Her knees are starting to ache a lot more. My father suffers from diabetes and he's a lot more forgetful, and his mobility is not the greatest anymore. And I started to come to the realization that, when I get these calls nowadays is how many visits do I have left with my parents. And in today's video, I want to share how the visits with my parents have changed the last few years since their health started to decline, and what I've learned from this experience. And today I chose this location out here, which is a beautiful location, and because this was the place I took them to the last time they visited me. I live about halfway across the country, so nowadays I only see them when I head back to their city. And I think one of the things that I want to share with you guys is, our parents, they've always been a constant in our life. They've always been there, and it's almost like a regular routine, like going to work every day. And we get older, we get married, we have kids, we start our own lives, and they were always there, celebrate, occasions with us, always available to chat on the phone, maybe have conversations that we enjoyed, and maybe sometimes hearing things from them that we don't enjoy so much, right? Like them lecturing us about our life. But, that's all the talk was always centered around, usually happy things. Weddings, upcoming weddings, celebration of a birth of a new child, or addition to the family. But the conversations for me, they start to change after I turned 55. Now, the calls that come in from my parents is always about health issues, or problems that they used to solve on their own that they can no longer solve themselves. For my mom, it was just simple as changing a light bulb because I don't know if she's gonna fall or something like that, right? Or informing me about their friends who have passed on. And this really affected me a lot emotionally because now I find myself bracing for every phone call that I receive from them, because I know one day I'm going to receive bad news. I don't know when it's going to come, but now you can see it, that it's not too far into the distant future. And I think it's really hard to grasp that your parents or my parents are actually going into the last chapter of their lives. And we all knew that, someday we'd have to, come to this point in our life. But when it's here, it's you have so many mixed emotions, right? And I don't really know how many years or how much time I have left with my parents, because when we were kids, we always feel time with our parents was unlimited, right? That even though we knew that everyone is eventually going to die and pass on. So I think we maybe realize a lot of things, and maybe when I go visit them now, I think about how many Christmases we have left, and probably not a lot, and how the Christmases have gotten a lot more quieter, sometimes a little bit more somber. They just don't seem to have the same how should I say, pep as they used to, right? Everything seems a little bit more serious now, and the conversations are a lot more serious. And The things that I think I look back at it, I look at the things that I were able to do with my parents that I took for granted. When they come visit me, my parents loved to go shopping, and I used to take them walking around to different shops in Chinatown to get their herbs, and they really had a great time, and just going to eat at the restaurants and to be with other members of the family. And we're seeing less and less of that now because my parents' generations, they all have their health problems, and they're all housebound now, a lot of them. And I think if there's anything I could do differently now, and that I do differently actually, is I start to cherish the time I have with them. I know that's common sense, but I think it's more. I do more than that. Is I tend to ask more questions about the past. I ask a lot about family history. I ask about why they made certain decisions. Even simple things like where did you and Dad meet? How did you meet? What was how did Grandma and Grandpa like Dad when you first introduced them? And things like that. How businesses were run back in their day, and things like that were really that I think that we took for granted, because I asked lots of questions about the family history, because once they're gone, it's completely lost. And the one thing about certain cultures, like Native culture and so forth, is oratory is such a big thing, to have these stories passed on from generation to generation. And I really don't want that to be lost, and or have any regrets and not know what happened in the past. And even with great grandparents, I found out so many things from my uncle and aunts about my great grandparents, how they were with my parents. So it gave me insight on how they grew up and why they made the decisions that they made when I was growing up. The other day, just to give you an example, when I went to visit my parents back in June, I actually decided to go back to see my grandparents' house, where I spent the first 2 years growing up. And I remember standing outside the door. They had a for sale sign on the lawn, and this young lady came out of the door, and she saw me staring at the house, and she waved, so I waved, and it turned out to be the granddaughter of the owner. And so I kind of just said, "Hey, I used to live here when I was 2 years old, and my grandfather was the original owner." And so they were so nice. They invited me into the house, and it was, of course, my grandparents bought the house in 1966, and this gentleman has done such a phenomenal job renovating the house. It doesn't even look, the inside and the outside doesn't look anything like the original, right? But as he took me for a tour around the house, there was certain rooms, the staircase, and everything that kind of reminded me, brought me back to that time in 1969, 1970 when I was there. And so I was explaining to the owner of the house, this is where I was when I was a kid, and we had this pillow fight with my grandma's silk pillows. And when I hit my brother across the face, I remember him having an allergic reaction, and his eyes was kind of swollen, and he had to be taken to the hospital. So I explained that to them and shared certain memories that I had, the limited amount of memories that I had in that house. And the owner was so, how should I say, he was selling the house, but he said, he felt it was just meant to be that I was there that day, because here I was, the link to the past, and I was able to share the history of the house. And I also sent him, we exchanged pictures. I sent him pictures of, me running around the house when I was a kid. And it just came full circle. So I was able to pass that story of the house, the history of the house, onto them. and they were able to pass these stories on to their grandchildren, which was really a cool moment, right? But it really brought me back in time. So so my take on this whole thing is to go back and ask your parents questions about your history and things that you want to know, because you don't know when the time comes, and they're not going to be here anymore to share those with you. And that's the thing for me is I found myself looking through old photographs when I was visiting my parents, things that I used to ignore in the past, and just take for granted that it was always there. I look at the photos and I now ask about the history and so forth, and I start putting together kind of like notes and kind of making almost like a historical account of our family history. So that's all I have to say for today. And my question for you today is, when did you first realize the relationship with your parents had changed because they were getting older? I'd love to hear from all of you. Feel free to comment below. I read every comment, and I love hearing from all of you people from around the world. And if you like this content on this channel and you like the content of this video and it resonates with you, please feel free to like, share, or subscribe, and feel free to check out my next video. All right, take care, and I'll see you guys next time.